What's happening, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Crossed Up. Anthony Sanfilippo is here, and I'm Bob Wankel. And Anthony, the Phillies, they're hitting home runs, they're winning games, they're pulling ahead in the wild card race. Are they going to leave everyone else in the dust? Are the Phillies going to cruise to the top spot in the National League wild card when it's all said and done? And more importantly, how are you holding up? Because you have been down at that stadium by my count. Let's see. Has it been 7 straight days now? Is that what we're working on here?
7 straight days, and one of them was rained out, so the other one was a double header. So yes, I think the emotion of the no hitter, and then going back yesterday, I was exhausted at the game yesterday because it was a little bit of a letdown too. I mean, in the sense that the game was pretty boring until the 6th inning when they started hitting runs, 5th and 6th inning when they hit all the runs. But yeah, it sounds like I'm getting a night off tonight, Bob. Is this true?
Yeah, they're dusting off the backup. I'm like, the Garrett Stubbs of Crossing Broads baseball coverage. I'm going to come in and try to give you a little bit of a rest tonight. So I'll make my way down there. I might actually have to put the stadium address into the GPS, make sure I figure out how to get back there. Now, it's funny because I was there for the doubleheader too, but we obviously consumed that game in a little bit of a different way. I had 8 beers. And, and by the end of the second game, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, damn, I'm pretty tired. I really feel for Anthony. He's been down here the 4 previous days too. So
yeah,
I'm looking forward to getting down there. I'm sure I'll probably bring the cold spell for the offense, but it's been a good homestand here, and it's the homestand that they've needed. And you hope that they don't take their foot off the gas. And there are a couple injury concerns, I guess, that are popping up here after last night's game, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But, I think I said to you last week, I wasn't thoroughly excited about where they were, even after that Miami series, because they didn't hit. They weren't hitting. We talk about the big 5, and everyone says, well, if those guys don't perform, they can't win. And I think the reason why it gets said to almost this nauseating level where you're just like, oh my God, is because it's true. But then you look over the past week, and granted, I know it's the Royals, it's the Nationals. The pitching here is not exactly electric, but they're starting to hit with some pop. They're starting to hit with some thump. You look at where Trey Turner was a week ago and where he's at right now. It's a total 180. Nick Castellanos, and I really want to get into him in some depth in a little bit. He looks like he's figured things out here in August. You're starting to see like Real Muto goes the other way and hits the home run. Like you're starting to see some things here. Now there are some issues, and we'll get to them, but I just feel so much better about where they're at from an offensive standpoint. And that gives me a lot more optimism moving forward right now.
Yeah. I mean, look, 18 home runs in the last 7 games. I mean, that's something else. And most of them are coming with runners on base. So it's not like it's just, home run or nothing. You got guys getting, having good at bats, finding their way on base, and then guys hitting home runs when those guys are on base. So it's the perfect combination, right? I mean, you want those things. You don't want it to just be, all or nothing swings when you go up there. You want guys to have a good approach. But taking advantage of pitches in the right spot and looking for pitches in the right spot, not chasing pitches out of the zone. I mean, that was the thing that was killing this team for so long is they were just swinging at freaking everything. And you'd be like, my God, what are you doing? And that's when the offense was really struggling. But now you see, are they still going to strike out? Yes, they still do. They still do. But they work a lot. Patrick Corbin stinks, but they had 7 walks yesterday. 7 walks. I mean, some of that's on the batter too. I mean, the pitcher stinks to walk a guy got 7 guys, but some of that's on the batter to have good at bats, fouling pitches off, and having a good eye to take pitches that aren't that are out of the zone and maybe they would have swung at before. So, yeah, it's a really nice combination that they got going right now, and it's so funny. Like Bob, we've always had. How many times have we had the Schwarber leadoff conversation? Right? I mean,
Sure.
So many times we've had that conversation, and what it's come down to now is you look at it and say, okay, here's a guy who leads a team in home runs with 30. He leads the team in RBI, and he's batting leadoff. Well, if you look back a year ago when he led the team in home runs at 46, he had the lowest RBI total in the history of the game for someone who had 46 or more home runs. He had 94 RBI last year. So that meant that there weren't as many guys on base. So this is a testament to the depth of the Phillies lineup this year, that the bottom of the order is getting on base and allowing Schwarber the opportunities to drive in more runs. Plus, he's also second in the league in walks, I think he at this point, right? So, I mean, there is, it's weird to have a 180 hitter leading off. It really, really is. I get it. I understand it. But for the way that this lineup is constructed, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and we know that there's, especially with Schwarber specifically, there's these ebbs and flows. It gets very hot, gets very cold. The power's there, and then it kind of goes away. And sometimes you're like, it's so stupid. I can't believe they're doing this, but it works and it's great. And when you see him, like he has the first game on Tuesday, where he hits the 2 home runs. You're feeling great about it, and then there's going to come that time again where he goes a week, like we just saw, and he's in the middle of a 4 for 51, and you're like, why are they doing this? But when you look at the net, it just seems to continue to work for them. But you go back to where we were in like February, March, and talking about what this lineup looks like and how difficult it's going to be. And it's going to be such a grind for opposing pitchers. And we've seen for such prolonged stretches this year that not be the case, where the Phillies offense is frankly feeble. It was kind of the total opposite of what we had anticipated. But right now you're in this stretch where you look at the lineup top to bottom and you start to feel really good about almost every single piece of it. And to me, the game changer in all of this is Alec Bohm, because when you look at Alec Bohm, and we talk about the big five, and we obviously understand that Nick Castellanos is red hot right now. But when I look at Bohm, I've kind of like toggled back and forth between, I really like his game. I like the approach, the ability to hit with runners in scoring positions, basically been there all year, especially on a team where nobody else can seem to do it with any consistency. But then you look at the power numbers, you look at the lack of walks, and you say, like, for a corner infielder, his offensive punch just isn't there. Like, I don't know that you can move forward with this long term. But you look up right now, like he's in a stretch in his last 15 games where he's hitting 365 with a 1.056 OPS, starting to drive the ball into the gaps a little bit. It's not like his home run totals are astronomical, but you're seeing that he's able to deliver occasionally in that front. Like, I'm not just cherry picking 15 days here either. You can stretch it back to 30, 40 days. He's been pretty good here now for a prolonged stretch. And at the top of the order, it just really lengthens things. And so while there's all these guys that are hot right now, I've really looked at Bohm and said, man, if he can just stay there, like, to me, that's the next step. Like, we know he has it in him, but can you keep it there? And that's, I guess, what I want to talk about first today. Like, what are you seeing from him right now? And do you think that maybe not at 365 with a 1,000 plus OPS, but has he turned the corner here or what?
Yeah, the thing of it is, Bob, the one thing that I really, really like about him is I really think that he doesn't get cheated in his at-bats, right? Like, I don't think he goes up there and wastes anything. Like, I think when he goes up there, every at-bat, the guy has a really good approach to the at-bat. Rarely do you see Alec Bohm go up there and it's, 3 pitches, strikeout, or swings at a pitch, takes a pitch and then swings at a pitch out of the zone and hits a pop up. I mean, yeah, look, the guy makes outs. I mean, sometimes he beats the ball into the ground too much. We've talked about that in the past too. But I really see like a consistent approach at the plate. And so I think that's why he's so good if you go through the whole season with runners in scoring position, because he has that ability to work an at bat and to really be selective and know how to waste a pitch. All right, I'm just going to foul this one off and go after another one and keep fouling them off, and then actually drive a ball up the middle. The most important thing with Alec Bohm I like is he uses the whole field. He can hit the ball anywhere, and I think that's what makes him an ideal 2-hitter at this point for this team. So do I think he can keep up a good enough pace to stay there for the rest of the season? I do. I do still wish that there was more pop, more drive to his swing, and we've seen a little bit of it. And he had the home run the other night, right? I mean, so I mean, we see it come out every once in a while. But you know what? If he ends up being, look, maybe that's just because we see his frame, right, and his size, and you say there should be more there. If he ends up just being a guy who is consistently getting hits and getting on base, and he's a clutch hitter for you, and he's batting in that 2-hole, and he's going to get pitches to hit because he's batting in front of Harper, and he does what he's supposed to do with them, fine. I'm good with it. I'm really, really, really good with it. I don't have
he is on pace for 17 home runs and 102 runs batted in.
Yeah.
And, I say, like, in a perfect world, you want a corner infielder to hit 25 home runs and hit a ton of doubles. And is he a little bit short in that front? Sure. But, like, it's not like he's hitting 10 home runs here, Like,
correct.
So there has been some growth there. I don't know how much more untapped potential there is in that front. Maybe a little bit more. Like, could he be a guy that over the next 3 seasons hits 20 homers a year? I don't think that that's an impossibility. He's sort of knocking on the door of that right now. So it's not like he's woefully inept in terms of power potential, but he isn't that pure 25, 30 home run guy that you thought you might have when he first came up. But really just kind of impressed with where he's at right now. And the other guy that I'm really impressed with is Nick Castellanos. And we've had discussions on the show. We've had discussions privately. We know that he's been streaky since he's been here. And we know how much confidence and feel plays into his production. I mean, he's talked about it, and he's talked about it numerous times. And when you look at what he went through during the month of July, it was hard not to feel like, hey, number one, mechanically, he's a mess. The timing is way off, but the stretch was so prolonged and it was so ugly for so long. And we had what we saw in 2022. You could not help but wonder. I mean, it's not to be a hot take artist. It's not to be like a doomsday guy, but it was hard not to wonder if everything positive that happened to him the first few months of the season, if it was all being undone. Like, was the confidence shot? Was he going home at night and saying, like, I'm totally lost again? Here we go again. And he's proven that that's not the case. And, you've been the guy that's talked to him throughout the course of the season. I feel like you have a good rapport with him specifically. And you've, I think on the show provided some pretty good insight to where he's at as this season has moved along. But I did text you. It was funny. Like, there are certain things that you see from different angles. And sometimes in the press box, I don't think that you get the best look at certain things. And I was down the first baseline on Tuesday night in that second game, and I had texted you, and I just said, I'm looking at him straight ahead, and I see, he's obviously in the right-handed batter's box, and you could just see the timing. And what did I tell you? I said, he is on it right now. Like, even when he was swinging through pitches, like, the timing was right there. I mean, he's figured it out. Like, it looks real here.
Yeah, it does. And that's a good thing for the Phillies. And because, July was an awful month for Nick Castellanos. And I don't know if it was, it's so weird with him. Like, I like, he just has this thing where sometimes when he starts going wrong, that I think that they figured out, like, he needs some kind of like outside comforts to kind of like bring him back, right? To kind of get, it's weird. Like, every time, and I don't want to make light of this because this is I think a legitimate thing. I've never seen an athlete in all of my years covering Philadelphia sports have their kid around as much as Nick Castellanos has Liam around.
Right.
And the kid is not a distraction by any means. He's, if anything, he's like an ambassador, at least at this point, for the Phillies. I mean, he's just awesome, this kid. And the players love him. They consider him like part of the team. Like, it's really cool to just watch that dynamic, right? Just in the clubhouse. But I think that that's part of it. Like, it makes him feel good that he's got his kid there with him all the time. Or when he went to Miami and he went and he called his brother and his best friend or whatever, who always throws BP to him, and they went to his home batting cage in his house. And they were having beers until like 1 a.m, just swinging and getting his swing right. And then all of a sudden he goes on an 11-game hitting streak after that. And he's putting balls out of the yard all the time. And he's got his timing down. He's not chasing pitches out of the zone again. It's like there are comforts for Nick Castellanos that have nothing to do with baseball that makes him a better baseball player. And I think that they've identified that, and they're going to try and make sure that those are always provided to him so that he can stay on this path.
Let me give you a couple quick numbers here. He's currently on pace for 28 home runs and 102 runs batted in. And if you go and look at his career numbers, only once has he hit more than 28 home runs, and that was in 2021 when he hit 34 for Cincinnati. So he's right there in terms of one of his best power years ever, and he's never knocked in more than 101. So if he does finish at 102, that's a career high. When you look at what he did last year, he finishes the season with 13 home runs, 62 runs batted in, and he missed some time last year. But this was the player the Phillies thought they were getting when they signed him. And it's been so refreshing to see, like, okay, you're not getting the reduced version of him. Like, I think if I would have said to you back in February, if we just get like 80%, 70% of what we thought Nick Castellanos was going to be, would you take that right now? Because last year was such a mess. But you're actually getting really essentially the best version of him. Now, when you look at OPS, like, yeah, I mean, sure, you go back to 2021, it was a 939 OPS, right? Like, is he
also hit what? What did he hit? 320 that year, 315?
Yeah, he hit 309 with a 362 on base percentage, but he slugged 576. Like,
yeah,
that's going to probably be the best, year of his career. So, but you're still getting something in line with what his peak performance is. And he's carrying him right now. I mean, you look at what he's done this month, and I mean, he's been phenomenal. He's hitting 302 in August, a 1.039 OPS, 6 home runs. I mean, he's been that middle of the order force that this team needs him to be. And I talk about what's it's going to look like in October. What's this team ceiling? If it was going to be, we have to pull Nick Castellanos into the postseason again, I tell you, I wouldn't be really enthusiastic about what's going to happen. But if he can be this guy, or even something reasonably close to it, oh man, this lineup just has a totally different feel to it.
He has I didn't even realize this until I just looked just now. He has the highest slugging percentage on the team. He's higher than Schwarber in slugging.
Amazing.
Which I didn't think was possible, but I guess, Schwarber doesn't do anything, doesn't have a lot of extra base hits other than the home runs, whereas Castellanos is still, he's got 26 doubles, leads the team in doubles as well, right? But the interesting thing is with the power surge here, with not just Castellanos, but with the entire team. If I remember correctly, Bob, if we go back, I don't know, it was maybe a month ago, maybe a little bit more than a month ago, Kyle Schwarber had hit whenever he hit his 20th home run. It was the episode right after he hit his 20th home run. We asked how many Phillies will reach 20. And we didn't think anybody but Schwarber at that point.
Yeah.
Now, Castellanos got there. And the way he's going is, like you said, he's on pace for 28. I know Turner's pace is not 20 yet, but if Trey Turner keeps hitting the way Trey Turner's been hitting for the past week, he could get to 20. He's at 12 right now. He could get to 20. Real Muto's at 14. I think he's got a shot at 20. So all of a sudden now, you got guys that are going to get to if at the end of the year, you got Kyle Schwarber at 42 and Nick Castellanos at 28 and Turner and Real Muto at 20, and then Harper's starting to get a little bit of pop back, right? Maybe he gets to 15, but he's on the upswing.
Yeah.
You're there, man.
Just based on pure pacing, Turner's on pace for 17, Real Muto's on pace for 20 on the nose.
Yeah.
So,
but I think, like I said, I think Turner is only on pace for 17 only because of how bad the first half was, right? So I think if he could just keep doing what he's doing and become the Trey Turner that everybody expected him to be, I think he'll hit more than 5 home runs the rest of the year.
Speaking of Trey Turner, where are you at on him now? Certainly we talked about the fans and that whole thing on Tuesday, and we don't need to go back down that road, but you look at his last 7 games now, I guess this homestand, and he's 10 for his last 27. He has 6 extra base hits, 4 doubles, 2 homers. He's knocked in 8. And kind of almost even more refreshing is that in 28 plate appearances, he's only struck out 4 times. So
Yeah.
that lets you know that there's been a little bit more of a competitive nature to his at-bats, too. He's not just freely swinging at absolutely everything and just becoming this automatic out. I'm sure that there was probably a point in April where the batting average over 7 days was better. He's maybe had better 7-day stretches this season. If he has, I don't necessarily recall it. I guess he had a game back. What was it in early June, maybe, where he hit 2 home runs against the Tigers. Like, I know he's had his moments, but is this the best we've seen Trey Turner this season? And do we think that he is now Trey Turner again? Like, how do you read this?
Well, it's certainly the best we've seen Trey Turner because it's been consistent, right? I mean, like and it's exactly. I was glad you pointed out that he only struck out 4 times, because those at bats have been so much better the past week. Just so much better. He's not out there just trying to hit any pitch that the pitcher's throwing. He's being selective. He's going after pitches that he knows he can hit. And yeah, are there still a few that, are just not like, oh man, what are you doing there? But at the same time, you're going to have that all the time. I mean, that's just the nature of pitching and hitting. Sometimes the pitcher wins, right? I mean, it's okay. It's okay. Even if you're the best player in the game, you're going to get beat by the pitcher sometimes, right? So on those at bats, you go, okay, fine, good on the pitcher. But yes, I'm seeing a much flatter swing by Trey Turner. He's not uppercutting a lot of things and popping the ball up and hitting those lazy fly balls with as much frequency. He's not chasing as many pitches out of the zone. So yeah, I this is good. Now, we do have the caveat, like you said at the beginning, that it's the pitching staffs of the Royals and the Nationals. This weekend will be an interesting one because the Twins actually, they're not a great team. They're winning the AL Central only because the AL Central is the worst division in baseball. But if nothing else, the Twins have good pitching, and he's going to face some decent pitch. Now, let me put a little asterisk because Dallas Keuchel is not a good pitcher, and he's pitching tonight. But the other 2 guys that they're going to get Lopez tomorrow, and they're going to get Gray on Sunday. They're decent pitchers. So if he keeps this through the weekend, you say, okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good, and that's a nice homestand, and that could kind of get you to be, to stay at this way going forward. And the Trey Turner you expected when you signed him is now finally showing up in August.
One other quick question here, because we just mentioned JT Realmuto, and there's a couple different ways that you can look at this, I guess. I think that the consensus here is that he's had somewhat of an underwhelming season. He certainly had a good game last night, but when you look at it, like, he's still, the OPS is 767. He's hitting 246. He's still pretty good defensively. Is he the best catcher in baseball this season? No, I think that that's probably pretty fair to say. But I guess the question I have for you is, have we been a little bit overly critical of JT Realmuto this season, or do you think that some of the concerns have been warranted? And I think, if you wanted to kind of push back on the numbers, because I would say to you, hey, if he hits 20 home runs, plays pretty good defense, OPS lands somewhere in the upper 700s, not a bad year. Like, we're acting like this guy's falling off a cliff.
No, yeah.
A lot of these numbers have been propped up by games like last night, where, and you could say that, I guess, to some degree about every player, but it really does feel like, hey, man, you take that 3-game stretch away and, oh my God, like, there's just not been much consistency in his game.
Yeah. I do think sometimes we are a little overcritical of Realmuto, and I think there's a reason that we are. And I think that the expectation here is he's a player who is supposed to be the best at his position in the game, who is not hitting like the best. So in other words, the numbers that you just said, if he hits 20 home runs and his OPS is high 700s, are you okay with that? And compared to catchers in the sport, you say, well, yeah. I mean, most catchers can't do that, right? And me, I look at the numbers and I see, look, OPS plus right now is 107, which means he's better than average. even in this inconsistent season, he's better than average. I guess the frustration is the inconsistency. It's like, because there are times you look at it and go, "Ooh, JT's had a great game or two," and then all of a sudden JT is not good for 6 games, and here comes JT again, and then he's not good again. And I think that's where we tend to get a little bit more critical of him. And so I think your question is certainly fair, that it would, if he got to these numbers at the end of the season, if this is what he is, like you just said, high 240s, 250 hitter, 20 home runs, and 770 OPS, 775 OPS, I would say to you that that's a down year. But if those were his numbers and he was just consistent with that to get to that, and it wasn't just these wild swings between great games, bad games, I think that we would be a little bit more acceptable of it than we are. And I think that's kind of but I think it's really astute observation by you to identify why maybe we are more overly critical of him than others.
Well, we are about 26 minutes in here, and we didn't talk about what happened on Wednesday night, which is that Michael Lorenzen shows up in his first game at Citizens Bank Park in front of a home crowd and throws a no-hitter. And it was a crazy night. You wrote a great story where you talked about nights like that. You always remember sort of the context of it, where you were at personally. What were you doing? What do you remember about that day? And you don't remember other days, but you remember where you were when special events like that happened. And it sort of just popped up out of nowhere, right? Like there was no, even like in the 5th or 6th inning, you're kind of like, yeah, he's doing it, but the pitch count's kind of up there. His stuff isn't electric. Like, and it happens. And so I guess we can dive into it a little bit, but here you are 2 days out now. I mean, what's your sense of what happened on Wednesday night?
I first of all, I just got to say, to actually finally be there for an individual no-hitter, regardless of the team. I've never been at a no-hitter that was pitched by one person.
One guy, yeah, because we were both at one last year.
We were both at the one in the World Series. But to actually physically be in the building for that was really, really, really cool. Of course, it made it better that it was a Phillies pitcher and in front of a Phillies crowd, right? So that's the vibe and the emotion was awesome with the crowd. But I've always wanted to see a no-hitter thrown, and I just never have. And so in and of itself, right? Just the build up and the drama of, will they let him do it? Can he do it? And then he does it. I think that makes it that much better, right? And even for me, like to sit there, like, because I'm monitoring Junior Marte like for 2 innings. I couldn't tell you one thing that the Phillies did at the plate in the 7th and 8th inning, because all I kept looking was to the bullpen. Is Marte throwing? Is he throwing hard? Is he
that decision to leave him out there like went against every physical
fiber in his body
reaction of Phillies decision makers. Like they probably had to strap themselves down. Like they probably had to be restrained on the bench.
Well, it was absolutely, because I was convinced. I'm like, 100 pitches after 7 innings. I don't know. And then I'm watching Marte because he got up right away. And it was just kind of like getting loose. He wasn't really throwing. And, then he keeps looking in, and then he's like waiting. And then, I don't know, that's 1 out. And then at 2 outs, he starts throwing. And I'm like, okay, here's what I think is going to happen. And I turned to Tim Kelly, who sits next to us from Phillies Nation. And I said to him, Tim, I think what he's going to do, because he's at 100 pitches, I think he's going to let Lorenzen come out, face a batter, and then remove him from the game so that the crowd can give him a standing ovation for having pitched 7 1/3 no-hit innings. That's really what I thought was going to happen, because I just thought the pitch count, there's no way he's getting through 2 more innings with 100 pitches through 7. Turns out, as everyone heard, he gave Lorenzen 20 pitches. He said, you have 20 pitches. That's it. And it ended up being that he gave him 24, and said that was his last batter. Like if he walked Dominic Smith there.
I don't believe that, for what it's worth.
Wow.
I think that he had 2 more. Like if there's a walk there and then there's another walk, yeah. I mean, I think it does reach a point where you just say we can't do it. But I just can't believe 2 outs, 9th inning, puts a man on. That's it. I think you almost run the risk of like revolt. Not that they would all turn on Rob at that point, but
Right.
you just I think that you have to have some feel like and to their credit, I think they exercise the feel for the moment.
Yeah.
That would not have been exercising the feel for the moment. You owe it to the player. You have to protect the player, but you owe it to the player in that spot to give him at least one more batter.
Well, I think probably what happens is he probably walks out to the mound and has that conversation with Lorenzen on the mound.
Yeah.
And then you might be right. Maybe he leaves him in, right? Maybe the whole notion of let me walk out to the mound, have a conversation, and then walk back to the dugout, leaving him out there. The crowd roars. It gives him that little bit extra of energy for one more batter kind of thing. Maybe you're right. Maybe that's what he would have done instead. But to me, that's all part of the drama of it, right? That's what made it so especially cool to be in that building for that moment. The other thing that really worked in Lorenzen's favor, talk about perfect storm of things, is the fact that they can give him 8 days off now because they have 2 off days next week, right? And they're going with it. They had a 6-man rotation.
I think that's why this happened.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah. 6-man rotation, the 2 days off next week. If those things don't exist, I'm not sure that he might be out after 7.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and Thompson said that. He basically said it. He said, if we were on normal rest next week, he's done after 7. So like I said, it was a perfect storm of situation. But yes, it's really freaking cool to be in the building for a no-hitter. And look, Michael Lorenzen's it's a great story. I mean, I don't know if anybody's gone back and watched, the E60 that we put out on Crossing Broad that was done when he was in Cincinnati 6 years ago. All about his dad and being an alcoholic and abandoning the family and how he decided to fly him out to see his major league debut. And then, he dies and he hits the home run the day after he died or 2 days after he dies. And it's just, the whole story is just awesome. And so, he's a good dude. And then his mom's, the story about his mom, right? She flies in because they're moving into an apartment or something like that or whatever, because they don't know how long they're going to be here, right? I mean, he's a free agent at the end of the year. And his mom flies in to kind of help him and his wife move into the apartment. And she was going to fly back out to California right after helping them move in, and decided to just, I'll push my flight so I can see Michael pitch tonight. And then she's there losing her mind, in the crowd. And NBC Sports did such a good job with the TV coverage that night. I usually rip that network, but man, they did a hell of a job with the no hitter. So the whole thing is just, I don't know. It is one of those things where we're all gonna just remember where we were, what we were doing when it happened, and it's something that's really special to the sport of baseball.
What happens after the game? You go in, you're obviously, the media is not allowed in while Rob's giving the toast and then he's saying thank you to the team, but you come in a couple minutes after. But what was the sense in the clubhouse afterward? And we know so much of what happened last year was sort of vibe oriented. We know that there was this feeling captured in that clubhouse. It was I don't want to say it was lightning in the bottle. I don't want to diminish what that team was. I feel like that sometimes we have a habit of doing this where we're the fans and Red October and it was a magical ride. And all those things are true, but the players still had to perform when the chips were pushed in, right? But I do wonder, are we starting to see those same intangibles and vibes be conjured up here? It's starting to feel like old times again here a little bit now.
I'll give you some color because I think that this will really help. So first of all, keep in mind, because of the fact that he pitches the no-hitter, there's a lot of on-field, a lot more on-field stuff right after the game than normal. So that took a little bit longer. Then they get off the field and go into the clubhouse, and Thompson does his speech, which they do the toast, and you guys have seen that video because the Phillies put it out. But yes, we were not in there for that. The whole time we're in the press room waiting for Rob Thompson. And Rob's usually a little bit longer than most managers that come out. I mean, I don't know if you remember, Girardi used to be the first, he used to be out in 2 seconds.
I appreciated that.
Yeah. Rob is not that way. Rob, you got time. I'd say on the average, Rob's about 15 minutes after the last pitch.
Yeah, like if you don't, so for those of you that don't know, and I guess a lot of you don't, like the game ends, and there used to be like a mad dash to the elevator from the press level down to the basement to get into the media room. Like
Right.
everyone would cram in. Now you can stop, go into the cafeteria, you get a cup of coffee, make a couple calls, stand around, and then you're still there for 5-10 minutes talking amongst the reporters before Rob comes out.
Sure.
Which is fine.
I keep just so people know, I keep score for every game. I have a book that I keep score for when I cover the games. I don't do this for when I'm just going to the game as with my kids or whatever. But when I'm covering the game, I keep the book, and I usually finish like doing all the numbers for the book, like the totals in the book before I go down to talk to Rob. That's how much time I have. I know I had that much time to do that. And then I take the elevator down and I walk in, and it's usually sitting there for like 2 minutes, and then Rob comes in, right? So we have all this time, and then Rob comes in, and we have probably a little bit more time with Rob than usual too, because there's all the things we wanted to talk about, the specifics of might you have pulled them, where was this pitch count total, what were you worried about, and this. So like that was I think a little bit longer coaches press conference too. So by the time we got to the clubhouse, it's 40 minutes after the game is over. Okay, which is a much longer time than usual. And when we walked in, it was still a party. There was still hooting and hollering going on. All the guys are still drinking. I mean, it wasn't like the celebrations after where there's champagne being sprayed everywhere on people's heads or anything like that. But everybody's got their beer or their scotch or whatever, their whiskey, whatever it is that they're drinking, and everybody's still laughing around. But it was the most full the clubhouse has been post game for any regular season game this year. So mostly every player was in there. And then, of course, here's the other color that I want to add to it. And the tweet went out, right? So I put the tweet out about Dombrowski walking in and then starting to chant his name, Dave, 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 Dave. And then somebody yells out, nice trade, which was really kind of funny. And then, Brandon Marsh goes, oh, check out those biceps. Like that whole thing, it's been out there. So it's like the whole thing is just awesome. But here's the best part. Lorenzen's doing his press conference, and there's 10 cameras, 20 media all around him. And I'm kind of like squashed in. I'm right to Lorenzen's right. So I'm able to look back behind the cameras, and back behind the cameras is Dombrowski standing there watching, and he's got his arm around Nick Castellanos, and Castellanos sitting there just watching. And Marsh is standing off to the side with Jake Cave and Weston Wilson. Like they're just kind of just standing there watching this happen, and they're doing it together, and they're all just watching this take place. And that when you see that, that clubhouse is together, man. Right. That the president of baseball operations is standing there with his arm around, one of his players, watching a press conference of another player. And Nick's Nick's throwing down a beer, and those three guys are really, like Marsh, I guess Marsh kind of looks up to those guys a little bit, even though he's the more established major leaguer. He's still younger than both Cave and Wilson. So I guess there's kind of like that, relationship between those guys. Like they're just kind of hanging off to the side. Garrett Stubbs. Now here's another thing. This guy's the greatest. He has this new outfit that he puts on after a win. And it's a pinstriped overalls, white overalls with red pinstripes and the Phillies logo on it. And he's got nothing on underneath. So it's just the overalls. And last night, this isn't even after the no-hitter. Last night, he's sitting around talking to like Reese and Schwarber, and I forget, there was somebody else that was there.
How has this outfit not made its way to the internet yet?
Well, I've decided that.
What are you guys doing down there?
I just was last night was the first time I overheard this conversation. He's now talking to them about ordering one for everybody. So could you imagine if this becomes like a post after every win?
That's like JUCO, like high school type stuff. Like that's not Major League Baseball.
Could you imagine?
Salty veteran guys, Yeah.
It's hysterical. It's hysterical. So I'm surprised it hasn't become a thing yet. I mean,
All right.
that's not like, look, you want to tackle that? Go down, you go up to Stubbs today when
Maybe
you
I'll
get down
say, hey
there.
man, like listen, I think it's time to unleash this thing.
Yeah, I think it's a story. I mean, I certainly think it's a story, but last night
That's
was the
fun.
first time I overheard him telling those guys, I'm getting one for everybody.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, you talk about a heck of a trade by Dave Dombrowski, at least through 2 starts. Michael Lorenzen, 17 innings pitched. I mean, he goes 8 in his first start, comes back and goes 9. I heard a stat, and it's been probably bounced around a little bit, whether it's the radio, maybe it was on the broadcast, though I didn't hear it. The Phillies have 5 starts this year in which their starting pitcher's gone 8 innings or more, and 2 of them have come from Michael Lorenzen in his 2 starts. But 17 innings pitched, 6 hits allowed, 2 earned runs, 10 strikeouts, 5 walks. He's been phenomenal. He's really given a bullpen that's struggled a little bit here over the past couple of weeks, a breather. And then that brings us to last night. And I wanted to know if I was actually surprised that you were going to be able to wake up on time to do this podcast this morning because, one, I mean, listen, like we said, you've been down at the stadium the last 7 days. I know you're tired. You're working a lot. But 2, you spent a lot of energy on Twitter last night waving the pom-poms for Aaron Nola. I mean, you were very excited, taking what I thought was quite a victory lap after a 5-inning performance by Aaron Nola.
I don't think I took a victory lap by any stretch of the imagination.
I'm just messing with you.
All I think I did was call somebody out for their constant badgering of the guy because he threw 22 pitches in an inning.
I know. And listen, again, it was a game where Aaron Nola gets very little defensive help, and made his life a lot harder than it needed to be. What was your impression of Aaron Nola last night? Because I'll give you the from afar take, which is I'm not going to ding him for not getting that deep into the game or only, allowing a run. Like, given his results over the past 5 starts, I thought last night was a step in the right direction, even if it wasn't a masterpiece. Mm-hmm. He just sort of looked like he labored through that game a little bit. He just doesn't look sharp to me. Credit him for limiting the damage, I guess.
Well, I felt he labored early, especially first inning. I mean, the first inning was like, okay, this could go off the rails quick, and it didn't. And the one thing I think that people miss a little bit sometimes and it has nothing to do with Aaron Nola, but more so with the Washington Nationals because they stink, right? But they are one of the hardest teams in baseball to strike out. They are the hardest team in the National League to strike out, and they're second, I think, overall in baseball when it comes to striking out. So they don't strike out that much. They're the second best batting average in the National League behind the Braves, which is crazy to me. Like I when I looked that up, I was like stunned. They don't have a lot of power. They don't have a lot of slug.
It's the same thing with Miami. The batting average is great. They don't score any runs.
Right. So. But that kind of team, a team that doesn't strike out and a team that gets a lot of hits, is the kind of team that you're going to end up throwing a lot of pitches against. And so, like, I look at that and say, could he have, would it have been better if he got through 6? Yeah. And they tried to get him through 6, right? I mean, he sent him back out for the 6th inning despite having thrown 94 pitches through 5 innings or whatever it was, 97 pitches through 5 innings. And much in the same way that they were thinking, like, with Lorenzen, it was like, well, he's going to get some time off here, so we could push him a little bit longer because he'll have a little bit more time to recover. Of course, then he goes out there and gives up 2 singles. Not that either one was a line drive. I mean, one was kind of a broken bad hit. The other one, I think he kind of jammed him, but it was still, it was a little bit better of a hit. But he gives up 2 singles, and then he comes out of the game. Strom gives up 1 inherited runner, and that's it. But on the whole, I thought it was a better performance from Nola because the games against Kansas City and Pittsburgh were terrible. Just really in all honesty, were starts that I thought he was worse in than even like a game like the Dodgers game when they lost 9-0.
Yeah.
Like you go back and watch that game and look at that game and say, yeah, okay, he wasn't good, but he was better in that game than he was against the Royals and the Pirates, right? So that's why there was concern because you look at who they were playing, 2 bad offenses, and he was struggling against them. Yeah, I would like to have been some more length last night, but I don't think it was a bad start by any stretch of the imagination. I thought it was a good step, and let's see where because he's going to pitch against them again next week. That's his next start. I believe next Saturday against Washington. In Washington is his next start. So,
I'll
yeah,
tell you
we'll
what,
see.
it's been a busy week. There's been a lot going on, a lot of storylines, a lot of action. I was impressed last night. I was, because you even said it. There was like this little bit of a hangover effect, even as someone going down there to cover the game. You're kind of like, all right, like, how do you really get up for this one? And they blow a ton of opportunities early. They load the bases, nobody out, double plays, just the same old stuff that we gotten accustomed to seeing far too often this season, where you kind of felt like Patrick Corbin's going to walk 7 guys in 5 innings, and they're going to let this guy off the hook, and they're going to end up splitting with the Washington Nationals when it's all said and done. And then they get going late, and they come back and they win the game. And that's the thing I've kind of been waiting to see with this team. We've seen them peak. We've seen them give you reason to get up and kind of get excited about what might be, but they've had a hard time really sustaining outside of that run in June, right? Where they really went crazy. Like last night's a game that they just lose. They lose it far too often. And for them to say, no, we're not going to do that tonight. It's really changes the entire feel of the homestand. Because if we're talking right now, we say, hey, listen, they just played a 7-game stretch against the Royals and the Nationals, and they managed to go 4-3. Like, okay, like that's fine, I guess. But man, that feels like a little bit of a missed opportunity. 5-2 has a totally different feel to it. It feels like they did what they were supposed to do. And we'll see what happens now this weekend against an opponent that, if we're being honest, compared to what we've just seen, the Twins are much better. But this is not exactly a world-class team coming in here either.
No,
on the heels of a 3-0 shutout yesterday at Detroit. Like they don't hit. They're not a great offense. This is not a special team by any stretch.
No, like I said, they have good pitching, and that's it. I mean, they got Durant at the back too. He's a stud. So you don't want to see him in the game. No, we talked about it last week, Bob, when this whole homestand began, and we said, they have to go at 7-3 is what it needs to be. I said I think they can go 8-2. That was under the assumption that they swept the Royals, which didn't happen. Because I did think they were going to lose 1 to Washington, and I did think that they would lose 1 to Minnesota. So if you still lose 1 to Minnesota, you end up 7-3, and that's what you wanted on the homestand. I think that's what you say. You're going to win each series, and you go 7-3 on the homestand, and that's exactly what that's all you could really ask for. So if they take 2 out of 3 this weekend, you should be happy. But yeah, tonight's one that I think that they have to get, because Keuchel stinks. It's his only his second game back in major leagues. Dude throws 85? I mean 86. He's no good anymore. He's got nothing left. This is a guy that they should just tee off on. So are
we getting Christopher Sanchez tonight for the Phillies?
Sanchez for the Phillies tonight.
It's weird, like, because they're TBD on the official probables. I don't know why they haven't just let it rip here. And
well, I mean, that's a good question, actually. And now you're making me think that, because I don't want to say this. I don't know how to say this, because this is just popped into my head. There was a conversation with Rob after the game last night when we were talking about the pitching and how it's going to line up and things like that. And he did say they're going to go back to a 5-man rotation after this homestand. And because he was asked about Sanchez, and he said, well, we'll talk about it when we get there. And it was like it was like this dismissive thing about Sanchez. And it almost makes me wonder if the fact that they haven't announced him as the starter, if there's something
brewing here.
Something brewing.
Yeah, just curious. I assumed it would be his turn, so I'm a little bit surprised that, at least for tonight, even if they had some interesting plans the remainder of the weekend, that they don't have listed. But I
think he has to. Now, and the reason I say that, Bob, I think he has to start because they've already announced Lorenzen's not pitching till next Friday, and Nola is going next Saturday. So that leaves 4 other guys. Okay.
It's not Wheeler.
All right. It's not Wheeler.
Not
He's going to pitch in Toronto. And I assume Suarez is going to pitch in Toronto, right?
I mean, it would have to either be Walker, Sanchez, or go bullpen guy here.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm so Walker is going to have to pitch tomorrow.
He'd be on 4 days rest if he went tonight, but why? Yeah,
Right.
I
No,
mean, I guess we'll see. I mean,
he's going to have to go tomorrow. And
by the time this show is actually
yeah.
rolled out, we might have an answer to this. So I don't want to spend too much time
I
on
mean,
it. Yeah.
no, but it's worth questioning because now that you said it, maybe this is Sanchez's last start, and then they send him down.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what he was kind of indicating. I don't know.
Real quick, I do want to just touch on two other quick items here. As every Phillies writer told us at the exact same time on Twitter last night, Bryce Harper left the game with mid back spasms. What degree of concern should we have about that?
It's a great question. I mean, he wasn't made available after the game. Thompson downplayed it, said it was day to day. They don't know when it happened or how it happened. To me, it looked like it was like that awkward when the ball hit off the base and bounced up and hit him in the face, just kind of the way his body was kind of positioned there, and he stumbled forward a little bit. Maybe something, muscles started tightening up there, and he did have an at bat or a plate appearance after that, and he drew a walk, and then was out of the game. So maybe as he was on the bases, as he was trying to run, maybe he started to feel it tighten up, and they got to massage that out. And they said day to day. So I don't know. I think it's a situation where he's either they're facing a lefty tonight, maybe he's out of the lineup.
I think it's fair to say that if you have tickets to tonight's game, you might not see Bryce Harper.
Yeah, he might not play tonight, and I think he might not see him at first base for a couple games. But I think I think he's okay. The other, the one that I think is more of a question that they kind of just, clouded over it a little bit was
this is why it concerns me.
Yeah, which was Real Muto. So Stott, first of all, they asked about Stott too, because Stott got beamed by La Sorsa after he gave up the home run to Castellanos. And he's okay. I mean, I know they went out and checked him and this and that, but they, Thompson said afterwards he's fine. Stott was in the clubhouse afterwards. He looked okay. He was, doing things normally. Didn't have any wraps on his hands or arms or anything, so he's fine. But Real Muto, most people missed it, but took a foul ball off of his throwing hand in the ninth inning, and it was hard to tell from the replay where exactly it got him. It maybe looked like it nicked a finger or a thumb area. And he, they did do a quick look at it, and he said he was fine. And he went out and finished the inning. But when Rob was asked about it afterwards, they said, "Yeah, we're going to get him looked at again tomorrow." That's it. That was the total update on him.
Yeah.
And so when you say we're going to get it looked at again tomorrow, did that mean that there's something that showed up on the X-ray you did tonight, and they want to take a look and see what exactly is that, and take a better, closer look at it, or what? Is the swelling too bad? They can't tell through the swelling. I don't think JT's catching this game tonight either. Just my prediction. I could be completely wrong, but just my prediction.
Well, needless to say, any world in which Bryce Harper and JT Realmuto are both out of a lineup, and if it happened to be for a few days, it's going to make winning this series a little bit more difficult. I will say that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's hit it with one last thing here and wrap it up.
Well, so one last thing tonight is one that I thought about bringing up on the last episode, but it had not really blown up until right after we recorded. And so I figured I'd bring it up now. But this whole thing with the Orioles broadcaster, Kevin Brown, has to be the most ridiculous decision by a professional sports team about one of their own employees I've ever seen play out in the public. And the fact that the Orioles have not responded to the overwhelmingly negative response, not just from the public, but from broadcasters of every other team and media members from across the country, is mind-blowing to me. This is public relations 101. And they're just like, we're not saying a word. Now, Kevin Brown's supposed to come back on the air tonight. Going to be interesting to hear what happens if he says anything, or if he's been told you can't say boo. It's must tune in TV for the start of the Orioles game. But my God, what is John Angelos and the Baltimore Orioles thinking for doing what they did to this poor guy?
So a few things. One, when you see these clips on Twitter, like this broadcaster's been suspended, and you press play and you're waiting for it. You're waiting for oh God, he really said that moment. And you're listening to this, and then it ends, and you just say, well, wait, what did I miss? Let me go back and play it again. and so you play it again, and you go, he didn't say anything wrong, right? You probably know that these statistics that he was rolling out about how the Orioles had struggled against Tampa Bay for so long, they're doing something this year that they had not done in a very long time. All of this information was in the team's game notes.
Yep.
All he did was basically recite the game notes on air. It's something that you wouldn't even think twice about.
And on top of that, Bob, there was a graphic built.
Yeah.
So it was
there's a collaborative, like it's not like he went rogue and just started talking about. By the way, the Orioles, this team has really been fucking terrible for a long time against Tampa Bay. So everyone, you should really appreciate this turnaround.
Right, that's my point.
This was a concerted, thought about, planned out effort. Now, the other part of it though is you talk to, and I have some friends that are Orioles fans and are really excited about the team this year, and they don't quite hate ownership the way they had previously because, one, they're winning in the present, and two, they have wave after wave of prospects coming, and this thing looks like it's going to be sustainable for a few years, even in that division. But there has been a long-running sensitivity from that ownership group about their perception of being cheap, and I guess they felt like this is highlighting our approach over the past few seasons, that we didn't spend money. We weren't doing what we were supposed to do. Like there's just this hypersensitivity to the team's recent failings. And so there you go. Now, here's the other part of it though. That announcer is very highly regarded around the sport. And if I'm him and I'm coveted by other outlets, other teams, I don't know. I probably take the high road tonight. I probably don't address it. And then I get the hell out of there. I say, I'm good. If you're going to do that to me, it's the type of thing that as a professional, if people like me that much, if people think I'm that good at my job, I'm young and up and coming. Like there's a lot of people that think he could be a prominent national voice moving forward.
Yeah.
I immediately start looking for my next move there.
Yeah. The only thing that I was told yesterday is they just signed him to a multi-year contract. So that I don't know how hard it is to maybe get out of that.
Yeah.
Or maybe to what degree do the Orioles hold their ground here?
Yeah. Well, they better come out and make it right. Like you said, no public comment to this point. Maybe they're waiting for him to go out first and then they piggyback it. But for me, it's like, yeah, I'm under contract, but you better make this right, because the only thing I would say, it's not like their comment doesn't make him look better. He already looked. He doesn't have to look better. Like nobody needs to make him apologize, or nobody, like it's not going to impact the public's perception of him.
Right.
I think he's already in good standing, but there should be just a, hey, we messed this up, or there should be some acknowledgement of it.
They better. And I thought it was only appropriate.
It's truly bizarre. What a weird story.
I thought it was only appropriate that on the night that whole thing blew up and became such a big deal, that they gave up a go-ahead grand slam to Kyle Tucker in the ninth inning and lost that game to Houston. I was like, that's karma right there. That's karma.
What do you think about what they did at the trade deadline, or didn't do at the trade deadline?
Oh, they got
Jack Flaherty.
Jack Flaherty, right?
Is that enough? I mean, I always of the thought, and I know where they're at. I know they probably feel like this isn't really us yet. We haven't totally arrived. But I'm like, you're winning the AL East. The Astros aren't the team that they've been in past years. There's some vulnerabilities in the American League. Like, I'm of the thought that I don't know if there was, like the Phillies, I don't know if there was a true difference maker to go get. But man, like you only get so many cracks at it. Like you don't know when it's all going to set up for you like this again. I'm a little surprised, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that there's also some. You got to remember, their GM came from the Astros, right? So this team has kind of been built in the same mold that the Astros were. The idea is they're going to get good, and then they're going to be good for a long time. So this is kind of like pre-2017 Astros right now. This is, maybe 2016. This is like the year before they went to the World Series. So yeah, I think it's the concept is, hey, we're good, we're young. Let's just give it a run with what we got, but we know that we're going to be this good again going forward. Let's see how far these kids can go on. They're pretty much on their own.
Right.
We'll make an addition. They'll help the pitching staff, and okay, that's cool. And let's see how these kids do. Carrying us on their own. And hey, if they get in the playoffs and they win around, we lose the ALCS, whatever. Hey, it's a great season, and there's a lot of excitement to build for this team going forward. I think that that's probably their mentality.
Right.
But I certainly see it the way you do. If I'm, and maybe this is a flaw in today's sporting world, but I've always been of the mindset that if I was a general manager of any sports team, my goal would be to win every year. And I understand that there are going to be years where you don't win, you can't win, or whatever the case might be. I get it. But if you have that opportunity to win, you try to win. You go for it. And the fact that they didn't, yeah, I roll my eyes a little bit at that for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. All right, well, that will do it for the latest episode of Crossed Up. You can follow Anthony on Twitter at AnsanPhil. You can follow me on Twitter at Bob_Wankel. You can follow the show account at UpPhillies. And make sure that you're subscribing to us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere that you get your shows. And we will talk to you on Monday morning.